In this real side experience, I would find myself on assignment. Present with me also would be a group that impressions revealed were other individuals on their respective processes of awareness, though their identities would be unknown to my personal self. The sense was that we were to engage with a large number of individuals for reasons of sharing the opportunity of the ears with them, the new you sound, etc., which is our primary purpose where it comes to real side and physical level activities, that of promoting the ears and the real guides. Recognition of the ears being the sole purpose that creation actually serves, and really then the sharing of the all ears is the only activity that makes sense in the simulators. As a simulation always follows intent, we always are the effect of our choices and decisions. When the real awareness of an individual decides to recognize the ears it is a part of, the personal self of said individual will be afforded that which it requires to get on board with the process. For until the moment the real awareness does decide such, when enough creational experience and references have been compiled, the being will be awareness immersed in the position of the secondary personal self, lost in the illusions of their millions of lifetimes of created phenomena. That the creation of a secondary personal self was necessary for an overall comparison between the two positions, that of the real awareness everything reality and the unreal simulation of the consciousness personal self. But now both these positions, as though each individual were two awarenesses, must be brought into amalgamation, be singing from the same song sheet, so to speak. The personal self must be aligned with its intent with the real awareness intent of its recognition. That although the personal self is simulated and unreal, awareness still pervades and incorporates it, and to be completely as the real awareness beings we actually are, standing absolute with the ears, demands absoluteness of intent placed with such a position. As anything less than 100% with the true reality must be that which is creational, must be ideas then we still cling to, and creationally resigned we will remain. As that which we hold to idea-wise we are choosing to experience, and that which isn't the wholeness everything of the ears, the pieces or parts, the ideas, can only be experienced where they can be isolated through simulator and body form mechanics. And so it is a process to bring the personal self into a full alignment with the real awareness intent for ears recognition. In actuality, we don't add anything to the personal self, it's more a case of releasing that which it is. And ultimately, free will is utilized to relinquish free will, as free will is effectively the personal self. And what would you need to self-generate in a reality that is everything? But initially, the personal self will need be made aware of the existence of the true reality aside from the simulators. For intent cannot be set with the ears, absent of the literal knowledge of its presence. And as I said, once the real awareness decides to recognize the ears, filtering into the experience of the personal self will be the hints, the references, the new presentation, or indeed the new friends deployed on assignments throughout multi-dimensional creation to present the all is and the real guides. And for myself and the new friends, the real guides will recognize when individuals are ready, and so we are provided the opportunity to engage with the various beings and body types, and be the reference delivery mechanism for ultimately their creational extraction. For through the real awareness decision to recognize the ears, so this effects and facilitates the means by which this process can begin, opening the door to the various methods by which the personal self can be approached. And so it was that the group and myself would find ourselves in a dense jungle. This could be symbolically construed as representing the current unconsciousness of the individuals we were set to engage with, as oftentimes woodlands can represent this on the real side. The overall wood being the consciousness and creation, the trees, the various ideas that fill it, the old adage of being unable to see the overall wood, the entirety of multi-dimensional creation for the trees, the idea agreements and attachments which claim our focus and limit our view. And if a darkness pervades the woodland, so this further represents that which is unseen, that which the individual is unconscious of. And so, as we engage with individuals, we tend to have to meet them at their level, so to speak. For the closer to home we can engage with them, the more likely it will be personal self-apparent. And as the personal selves initially will be generally physical, astral focused and positioned, ideally the physical level is where we would seek to approach them, not always possible given geographical time and space limitations, and so the next best option is multi-dimensional and on the real side. And so we rather engage with their decided simulation, the environments they are operating in on the real side, and as these are their chosen situations, agreement permits us access, but we rather then are playing within a simulated game of their devising. In this case then, the group and I were as though entering the woodlands of the unconsciousness of the beings we were to engage with. For indeed, the group and I would spend a few moments in the forest surviving, erecting tents, foraging for supplies, and so forth, as though we were subject to a more arduous situation of creational survival through the engaging with the simulated game as decided by those who, like all in creation, will be struggling, especially if only a personal self-immersed, as these beings were, until presented with the opportunity of the ears, as was our purpose. Symbology aside, it may simply have been an actual position in multi-dimensional real-side creation we were operating in, but either way, as we proceeded through the jungle, we came across a magnificent city. It had a rather Amazonian, Aztec flavour to it, and interestingly, several months ago, I shared how I and a group would in fact briefly visit such a city, one of the same or similar architectural design, and the peoples there would emerge from the various structures to engage with us, but the experience would end at that moment. And here now, impressions suggested this was indeed the same city, where the same people resided. We had returned to where we briefly had frequented the city before, where back then we were as though making our presence known, and only now were the beings ready to accept us, the inhabitants, personal selves, receptive to what we were presenting. For as we entered the grand city, the peoples there did seem as though throwbacks to a bygone human era, wearing the kind of garments and regalia typical of the thousands of years ago, where such was a commonplace on the earth. They were a little suspicious and guarded at first, but in no way hostile, and we would await their chief, as we were granted an audience with him. One of my group would remark that my footwear was somewhat drawing the attention of the city dwellers, and as I looked, I would realize they were of a design that was rather sophisticated, perhaps the kind you might see in a futuristic sci-fi movie, and I would quickly remove and conceal them, for we had been adorned in such a way that although not resembling the city beings, would be at least acceptable by their standards. Footwear does represent the physical. I had the impression the group and I had been on another assignment just prior to this one, something that was a physical level impacting perhaps, and of a futuristic flavour, and represented then a kind of overlap between that assignment and our current one, almost along the lines of how, when one rushes from one position to another, say from home to work, perhaps one overlooks completely the attire alteration that is required, with the real awareness to lean to, as it is a part of the everything reality that pervades through all consciousness, so any language can be accessed and utilized. For indeed, these people did speak in a language unknown to my current personal self and that of the groups. However, it was as though deemed prudent to not be able to fluently converse with these people in their native tongue. The sense was that they would be somewhat unnerved that we could do so, that although we were dressed in such a way that would sit comfortably with them, we still were presenting in our usual white-skinned human forms, very clearly outsiders, though accepted into their city. They had a particular consciousness where were we to speak also in their language, we may have been considered perhaps demons by their reckoning, and we didn't want any silly assumptions and considerations to muddy the waters of what was our purpose here, to present them with the ears, that yes, they were ready for it, but they still would have their personal self-ideas, attitudes, and particular consciousness design. And so our personal selves were denied, as though the real awareness's ability to understand and speak in their language, but regardless, we still were able to communicate with them our objective, as we addressed the city dwellers and their chief, for their real awarenesses were ready for the process of ears recognition. Their personal selves had been as though prepped for our arrival, and very likely we were engaging with them also, real awareness to real awareness, being to being. We just had to delicately work around their personal selves. As it transpired, there was another element to this whole affair, in that these people had a situation where they were not alone, where they were positioned here on the real side. They in fact shared the location with another species, one that resided underground. I would be afforded as though an instantaneous download of the situation, as though provided a view of the continued dynamic that existed between these two species that had spanned a great duration of so-called time. However this situation had come to be, so it was that these people existed on the surface in their Aztec-style city, but another race of beings, as I said, resided under the ground, and I would be reminded a little of the H.G. Wells tale of the Time Machine, where the far more advanced Morlocks dominated and subjugated the more primitive Eloi. For indeed, the underground beings not only utilized technology, but their body forms were mechanical also, a race of robots in actuality, but of a particular consciousness where they chose to be abrasively inclined toward the surface human, Amazon-like people. Any situation between races is that which has been decided in relation with each other. As everything in creation is based on cause and effect agreement, situations such as this between species can only be so if agreements are present, as though contracts arranged between beings. Consciousness dictates the movie scenes and situations that are effected from it, a power dynamic of one species being in a technologically advantageous position and another not, can only be so if each species have chosen the circumstances by which such can exist. But additionally then, must agreement be installed where one can impact the other adversely. Absent of such agreement, and an individual or a species can be as powerful as they decide, but will be unable to infringe abrasively upon another, as a simulation cannot be present without the agreement ideas that effect it. And however the agreements had been placed between these species had resulted in a situation where they both occupied the same creational position, the robotic race underground, the humanoids on the surface, with a vast difference in technology between them, and the inclinations of the mechanical beings was to periodically emerge from the underground and wreak havoc and destruction on the surface dwellers, who were practically defenseless against such technology. The robotic beings wouldn't exact genocide on the surface humanoids, for to abuse the humanoids in this way was their thrill. Absent of the humanoids, and their decided amusement and pastime would be unavailable. So it was a long, drawn-out and continuous series of attacks, destroying partially the surface city, wiping out a certain proportion of the population, operating not only as formidable mechanical body forms, but utilizing sophisticated machinery also. That reminded me a little of the scenes in Terminator the movie, the laser blasting, walking and flying machines, etc. That although this was a situation effectively chosen by both species, shared simulation can only stem from shared agreement, and a situation that had been taking place for the longest time at this moment, so the surface humanoids were deciding to step up and become more aware. But this ongoing plight was somewhat claiming most of their attention, and as such wasn't especially conducive for an awareness process. A little like trying to go through your schooling lessons while the building is being bombed. While in creation, as we go about our awareness process, we choose and decide what effects and experience we will take on. Nothing is negated, we just see all ideas and affected circumstances for what they are. Unreal simulation that serves as nothing but comparison to recognize the is by. That although we would seek not to get embroiled in what is the karma, the ideas as agreed to and shared by others, in situations such as with the surface humanoids, where they are intending to become more aware, such interjection into their affairs on our part, if it can alleviate the situation and be more beneficial for the individuals involved in regards to their awareness, this then makes sense, and we choose then to take on the ideas as we rather gate crash a decided movie, as it were, and take on whatever karmic effect fallout as a consequence. For as an example, the guides will on occasion take on the effects that the new friends were to receive. They will take certain hits for us, as it were, as though transferring a file from our computers to theirs and managing it. And as things stood, it was the more primitive, technology-wise at any rate, beings that were stepping up. The more advanced robotic beings had no interest in awareness or anything beyond the ideas of creation they were indulging in, which rather drives home the reality that the body form, the development of the consciousness, the technology and mental attributes required for such have nothing to do with awareness and the true reality. And so, as I received this download, a quick view of the situation as it existed between these two races, so the group and I would be waiting for when the robotic beings would emerge again. They would be oblivious of our presence until confronted by us. We would firmly advise them to leave the humanoids alone. They evidently didn't consider us much of a threat, a relatively small group wearing the simple garments that we were, and to their mechanical eyes, just as fragile a body type as the humanoid surface dwellers they delighted in tormenting. And so it was that they would focus their attentions on destroying the nuisance that the group and myself presented as, and once accomplished, so would their intentions be to resume with their usual destruction of the humanoids and their city. At that moment then would glowing golden armor manifest upon the bodies of the group and myself. This I have experienced before, and based on the colour, that of gold, which oftentimes represents the true reality, I have dubbed this the armour of the ears. Not literal armour, but more that as we stand as the real awareness beings we are, and with a process that is detaching agreement from all ideas of the consciousness, all ideas that present the various limitations that they do, and in relation to other beings, so we become ever more so automatically protected. For it is the ideas we cling to that hold us to the limitation they effect as. In regards to other beings, we will have various idea agreement dynamics in association with them, dictating what can take place in the experience we share, as it was with the humanoids, where agreements dictated they were the recipients of sustained torment by the mechanoids. And as we are on our processes of releasing these agreements, so we become progressively indomitable as we operate in creation. That others may attempt to assail us, but absent of the agreement that they can, their efforts will be found wanting, and the simulation will express however it might as we put down their attacking efforts. As such, despite the mechanoids bringing the full weight of their technology to bear, we were able to best them, and they would retreat back to their underground lair. That we had intervened in this instance was one thing. That the humanoids were now safe depended once again on agreement. If the agreement between their species and the robots was maintained, potentially the situation could continue, if indeed the robots chose to perpetuate it. For even if through agreement we can dominate another and the circumstances provide the opportunity, it is still our choice to go through with such action. But for now the humanoids were safe, and my impressions were that they would continue to proceed with their awareness processes. This would include consciousness facing and releasing of all idea agreements contained therein, and so would they improve their creational circumstances as a consequence. The robots, although with no interest in their own real awareness, had still been exposed to that which was aside from the ideas they had embraced, their routines and patterns of a personal self-behaviour. For as we engage with all, in whatever form this takes, what we are about, what we are presenting, the ears, will feature in their experience, regardless of their interest or not, and the robots may perchance take a moment of a pause to evaluate what took place, to consider how the group and I were untouchable despite their technologies, and this may be the catalyst for them also wanting to learn more. But for now, our decided interjection was complete. We would take on the effects of doing so, and however they may present themselves as, very likely, further interactions with the robotic species, as we had rather gleaned their attention now. I now found myself on the ground floor in my physical level house recreated on the real side. representing my consciousness, and specifically that which is present on the ground floor would reveal conscious personal self-agreement as extended to whomever happens to be featuring there. The group I had been on assignment with would be present, and we were, as though, presenting a report of our activities to Dwayne. In addition, would there be a group of other new friends present, and it seemed they too were going to embark on a similar assignment, as though to engage with the same humanoids in their city to determine as to the progress they were making with their awareness processes, and if they required any further assistance, especially in regards to the robot beings who were still brooding deep underground and seemingly scheming and plotting some measure of revenge. And so I would produce as though a handheld laptop device which displayed a recorded visual of the assignment the group and I had just completed, as though affording them a few tips that could be gleaned through going over the footage, and there the experience would end.
Another gigantic fun one. That's really cool. Yeah, that's a good idea. We can eventually, create our own robots that just go up and down the street singing "You" and telling people about it. We program them a particular way, and eventually they have their own consciousness. And also, I like the idea that some of the robots are underground scheming away. So, again, they could be utilized and hired to steam our vegetables. So again, there's always a purpose for anything. Yeah, that sounds good. But that's great, Kevin. Thank you so much. Let's see what happens. Thank you.
And so, sing the new you song. It is your connection to the true reality, the all is, that the real you, your real awareness, is a part of. New